to prayer and pose. Put on some of your favorite music and then let's start to breathe together. We're going to come onto our backs for some extended exhale breathing. Placing the hands on the belly just because it reminds us that we want that belly to move. We want to see it rise and fall and feel it rise and fall. We're going to inhale for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 8. Extending out that exhale is going to be calming, centering. Inhaling deeply and slowing that exhale way down. Twice as long of an exhale as our inhale. Today we're talking about verse 2 of Psalm 23. Psalm 23 begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And then it goes on to say, "He makes me lie down in green pastures." Green pastures sound pretty good, don't they? All I have to do is imagine that I'm in a green pasture and suddenly I'm breathing a little slower. I'm feeling a little more peaceful and calm. Just imagining that green pasture. So isn't it funny that this verse says that God makes us to lie down in green pastures? It doesn't say that he recommends or suggests that we lie down in green pastures. It doesn't say if you can find the time. It says that he makes us. As ironic as that sounds, most of us can relate. We run ourselves into the ground by going and going and going, adding just one more thing and then just one more thing until we're completely exhausted. Often saying things we wouldn't want to say, doing things that we wouldn't want to do, maybe even getting physically sick, being made to lie down literally. All the while, our shepherd is calling us away from that exhausting rat race pace of our culture to regular rhythms of rest. God established rest at creation. He not only paused at the end of each day to look at what he made, noting that it was good, but he completely set aside the 7th day of creation for rest. He commanded rest from our work when he gave the 10 commandments. Later in the New Testament, Jesus calls us away, saying, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." And then, of course, here we are at Psalm 23, talking about how the shepherd makes us lie down in green pastures. Max Lucado says in his book, Safe in the Shepherd's Arms, this. He says, "Green pastures were not the natural terrain of Judea. The hills around Bethlehem, where David kept his flock, were not lush and green. Even today, they're white and parched. Any green pasture in Judea is the work of a shepherd. He has cleared the rough, rocky land. Stumps have been torn out. Brush has been burned. There's been irrigation, cultivation. Such is the work of a shepherd." So when David says, "He makes me lie down in green pastures," what he's saying is that my shepherd makes me lie down in his finished work. With his own pierced hands, Jesus created a pasture for the soul. He tore out the thorny underbrush of condemnation. He pried loose the huge boulders of sin. In their place, he plants seeds of grace, digging ponds of mercy. And he invites us to rest there. Imagine the satisfaction a shepherd must feel. Work completed, watching his sheep enjoy time in that rich green pasture. Then imagine the satisfaction of God when we do the same, coming away for a time of restoration, drawing close to him in times of stillness, times of prayer. His pasture is a gift to us. It's not a pasture that we've made ourselves. It's not even a pasture that we deserve. It's a gift, a merciful gift. Let's take just a couple more breaths here. Still inhaling for a count of 4. Exhaling for a count of 8. Let's continue to be intentional about our breath as we practice today. We can draw that right knee towards us. Let's give a twist to that ankle and switch directions. Then we're going to reach overhead, extending that right leg out, inhaling, exhaling, and we'll draw that knee towards the chest, lifting the rib cage towards the pelvis, following with the chest and the head, and then releasing back down. Inhaling, we stretch apart, fingers one direction, flexed foot the other. And we draw that in for our exhale. Then inhaling up, rib cage to pelvis, followed by the chest and head. And releasing vertebrae by vertebrae. One more time, extending out. Knee to chest. Crunching, leading with the rib cage. And releasing vertebrae by vertebrae. We can drop that leg down. Let's repeat that on the other side. Extending out, flexed foot, reaching overhead, and then drawing that knee in towards the chest. Once we're in that position, we're lifting the rib cage towards the pelvis, followed by the chest and the head, then releasing down vertebrae by vertebrae. Inhaling, we stretch and reach. Exhaling, knee to chest. Inhaling, crunching up, leading with the rib cage. Then we release, reaching. Let's take both of those feet to the mat. Then we can come back and forth, getting just a little bit of rotation and opening up our hips at the same time. Windshield wipers are right to left. Then we're gonna place those feet back into the mat. We're gonna reach both arms overhead for some lateral flexion, reaching up over the shoulder with the left and releasing back down to neutral. Same thing other side. Reaching with the right, releasing back to neutral. Inhaling, we reach up. Exhaling, neutral. Moving with our breath, still keeping that breath nice and long, nice and deep. Noticing the spine as we create space down that spine. Once we've got that evened out, so we've got the same amount on both sides, we can release. Let's draw those knees in towards the chest, rocking it out, rolling it over, coming onto all fours. Let's play with the wrists a little bit here, gently coming forward and back. And we can slowly, or just slightly turn them outward, turn them inward. Just want to take care of our wrists here. Then we're going to come into child's pose. We're going to flow between child's pose and cat-cow all at the same time. As we're in this child's pose, let's start to arch the back, lifting the spine, coming forward into cat. Then we're going to drop the belly while keeping control, drawing the heart forward. Hips come high into cow. Staying in this extension, we're going to move back into child's pose, dropping the head, lifting the spine, coming back to all fours. Dropping the chest and the belly, bringing that chest forward, tailbone up, shifting back. Dropping the head, lifting the spine, coming forward to all fours. Releasing into cow, inhaling, exhaling. Noticing all the places that we do feel this in the spine and the places that we don't feel this in the spine. And see if we can take those places that aren't moving into flexion or extension with this and engage them in this process also as we continue to move and flow. Let's all meet in child's pose. Taking the right hand over to the left for a little more lateral flexion, this time a little bit deeper. Maybe you can even kick that up rib cage into this a little bit. Notice with every inhale, there's more space created down that side. Head is relaxed. Let's take some time here for a prayer of adoration, praising God for who He is, for being our shepherd, our provider, for being a God of rest. Only a God who loves us would be a God that says, you need rest. Now we're going to switch to the other side, drawing that right hand to neutral, reaching with the left towards the right. And we can take some time here for a prayer of thanksgiving, which isn't a prayer of thanking God for who He is, but thanking God for what He has done. Breathing with this prayer of gratitude. We've got some extension, some flexion, some lateral extension. Let's come onto the belly here for a little rotation. We're going to take the hands underneath of the forehead And just alternate lifting up into some divas, getting some rotation here. Inhaling up, exhaling, we release back to the mat. Feeling some good rotation here in the spine. Lifting and lowering, waking back. Now we can release the forehead. We're gonna lift the right leg, rotating over towards the left. Feeling that rotation again, then replacing that foot in line with the hip, lifting the left, bringing it over towards the right. Do a couple of these. Lifting the right, rotating left. Placing it right back in line with that hip. Lifting and rotating. And let's sink back to child's pose. Coming back into that time of prayer, this time for confession. Searching our hearts. If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us. There's a restoration. Now let's draw ourselves forward once more. We're going to come into a position that's much like a plank. We're going to take our hands to the mat, pressing the hands and the forearms in. And then this isn't a plank, it just kind of starts like a plank. Now what we want to do is lift the navel up off of the mat. And keep lifting until we find a place where we've got a little bit of a shake going on. We want to let that shaking happen. Pressing the hands and the forearms into the mat. Shaking, releasing. Feeling this, allowing this shaking. And we can lower that back down. Let's shift the hips back. Taking our hands over to the right, drawing the left foot up, framing it, pushing off. Inhaling, we lift up. Taking our hands together, coming into standing back bend with steeple hands, gaze high, then returning to neutral. Forward fold down, stepping way back with that right foot into a low lunge. Taking those arms back overhead, coming back into that back bend. We're going to take our hands back to the mat, shifting that left foot behind us, walking the hands forward while keeping the hips hips above the knees, coming into puppy. Then drawing those hands under the shoulders to a more supportive position, tucking the toes, coming into down dog, pushing those hips nice and high, letting them float towards the ceiling, head between the biceps. Then we're going to drop the knees, drop the belly, everything comes to the floor, using the strength of the back, not the hands. We lift, drawing the shoulder blades towards the back of the body, and we're going to tuck the toes, pushing back to down dog once more. Let's take that right foot forward, coming back into that low lunge, drawing the arms overhead, coming into that little back bend here. Taking our hands back towards the mat, we step forward with the left. Inhaling up, hands meet, coming back into steeple hands, standing back bend. When we're in a back bend, we're using the strength of the legs. We've got soft knees, coming back to neutral, circling down to forward fold, stepping back this time with the left, coming into that low lunge, lifting steeple hands. Back to neutral, taking our hands back to the mat, pushing that right foot back, walking the hands forward while keeping the hips over the knees, dropping the head into puppy, then taking our hands to a supportive position, pushing back to down dog, heels towards the mat. Dropping the knees down, let's come all the way down to the mat, using the strength of the back, extending out the neck and then lifting heart forward, feeling the strength of the back here, tucking the toes, pushing back once more into down dog. Drawing that left foot forward, you can help it if you need to. Coming into that nice long, lengthy, low lunge. Hands come overhead. Coming into that back bend. Feeling your release of that rear hip flexor. Bringing our hands back to the mat. Stepping forward, bringing those feet underneath the hips. Inhaling up. Steeple hands, standing back bend. Back to neutral. Forward fold. Stepping back with that right foot. Low lunge. Lifting. Steeple hands. Hands to the mat. Pushing back to puppy. Supportive position. Shifting into down dog. Dropping the knees, dropping the belly. Lifting, extending out and up into cobra. Pushing back to down dog. Drawing our right foot forward, lifting into that low lunge, steeple hands, hands meet, coming to the front of the mat, stepping forward, inhaling up, back bend, reaching back to neutral, forward fold, stepping back with the left, low lunge, arms overhead, steeple hands, hands to the mat, pushing that leg back, hips over the knees, extending forward for puppy, and bringing the hands underneath of the shoulders, lifting into down dog. Knees to the mat, dropping the belly, reaching forward with the neck, then lifting the spine, using the muscles of the back, coming back into down dog. Let's stay in down dog. Drawing the heels towards the mat. Head hanging between the biceps. We're in an inversion here. We've talked in the past about the effect of our breath on the lymphatic system. Inversions are also going to help lymph to be eliminated from the body. We've got one-way valves in the lymph system, and it just helps to open them up, clearing out the toxins, bacteria, the lymph carries around. Breathing. Maybe we want to jog out the heels here. And then let's walk those feet towards the front of the mat. We're going to take the feet just a little bit wider than our hips. And then we're going to drop down into a yogi squat, garland, malasana. We're going to take the elbows, pressing open those legs. The heels should be down here. If we're not able to, we might have a tight soleus, which is that back muscle of the calf. It's just behind that ball, the gastrocnemius. Runs a little bit deeper, and if that's tight, it might be hard to bring the heels down. If that's the case, you can roll up a mat, placing it underneath of the heels, or maybe a little blanket. Maybe you find a tendency to round the back here. Check in, is our back nice and straight? We might have some weak spinal extensor muscles. Maybe we notice that there's a difference between the right and the left. That could be if we've had a shoulder injury, a hip injury. Taking this pose and using it as a way to just assess what we are and aren't able to do. Always have that option of going into child's pose or down dog or mountain. Let's take the hands to the mat, lifting the hips into forward fold. Breathing. We always have that option to come to monkey. Either one though, we want the sides of the feet to be parallel to the edges of our mat. So we want the hips, ball and socket of the hip to be over the heel, but then we want to line up with the outer edges of the mat. We might feel that that turns our toes in slightly, but it's probably going to put our hips and knees into good alignment if we do. Head hanging down if that's comfortable. We're going to step back with the right foot, lifting into lunge. trying to come to about a 90-degree angle if our knee health allows. If we're taking care of our knees, you don't have to go that deep. We don't want to cross that front knee over the toes. We do want to press that front foot into the mat. We've got a rear lifted heel, and the arms are extended up here. There are 3 parts to the trapezius, and all 3 parts are engaged, but we do want the middle and lower traps to be the biggest players here. And in order to keep the upper traps from taking over too much, pushing up those shoulders by the ears, that's going to be too much engagement. So we actually kind of bring the shoulders down as we lift with the arms. So fingertips are really reaching up. Shoulders, not so much. They're down a little bit. Keeping the middle and lower traps, our main players. The rhomboids are stabilizing. The shoulder blades, biggest muscle of the back, the latissimus dorsi, is taking a break, getting a stretch here. We're breathing, strengthening the legs. And then let's open up to warrior 2. Getting that torso open towards the long edge of the mat, reaching out those arms in 2 directions. Let's take those shoulders and like hunch them up purposely and then release down. We might find that we can release just a little bit more when we do something like that. Our gaze is over the middle finger. Pose of strength. Equal pressure in the right foot and the left foot. Feeling grounded. Never going past 90 degrees angle here with the leg. Making sure that knee is pointing towards the second toe to protect our MCL. And now let's straighten that leg, keeping a soft knee, taking our arms overhead, lifted triangle. It's a good place to check in with our torso. Maybe we felt like on that warrior 2, our torso was facing the long edge of the mat, and now we discover, whoops, no it isn't. So we adjust. Let's take those hands forward, dropping the left arm down, working against gravity, which really wants that torso to be rotated forward and down. And we're saying rotate up, working the core in that way as we try to get the shoulder blades to stack on top of each other. Drawing back up with the right side of the torso, strengthening the core. Arms are reaching far apart from each other. So we think about the right fingertips trying to stay away from the left fingertips. The most important thing here though is what's happening with that core as we're opening up, breathing. And let's drop that right arm down. Let's grab a block. We're going to turn that rear foot, all 10 toes facing the front of the mat, rotating from the belly button, drawing up this arm, the left arm, taking our gaze towards the back of the room, twisting. If this bothers your shoulder, we can drop that hand behind us. All the twisting is happening in the abdominals anyway, right? All the way around the core. When we're twisting, we've got at the front the internal and external obliques working. At the back, we've got those middle and lower traps working. And then front and the back, we've got this serratus anterior working. Now let's come back center, settling into pyramid. We can grab the blocks, pushing those hips back, or we can come to the floor, the ankle, the calf, chest and abdominals resting on the leg, head hanging down. Maybe we want to challenge our balance, lifting the hands totally off the mat, bringing them behind us and opening up the shoulders. Everybody hopefully feeling a good hamstring stretch. All 10 toes facing the front of the mat. It's like we're standing on train tracks. It's a pretty narrow stance here. Hips pressed back, breathing. Let's take our hands to the mat, drawing those feet out and lifting into side plank. We've got options in side plank. Side plank's a lot of core work, and maybe it's too much. Maybe we need to come onto one leg, or maybe we've got some shoulder trouble and we want to come to the forearm. wherever we are in this pose today. We want to feel lots of core engagement here. Notice what happens to our breath when we're in side plank. Does it become a little more difficult? Have we shortened it? Try to lengthen it back up again. And let's drop that right hand back down, turning towards the mat. We're gonna draw our right foot up to be right next to those hands. We're gonna work the torso to be next to it. We wanna take a look and make sure that our heel and our knee are in a line, extending that rear leg out. We're in a high lizard here. Hands underneath of the shoulders, soft elbows. Feeling a stretch of the groin, of that rear hip flexor. Breathing. And we can push that leg back, coming back into down dog. Head hanging down, heels towards the mat, creating an L with the thumb and the first finger. And we can walk the hands towards the front of the mat. Inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. Let's take those hands to our sides, remembering to keep the palms forward. It's gonna encourage us to just open up the chest, reversing all that damage we do when we're over our phones way too often. Soft knees, feet plugged into the mat and mountain. Let's take a moment here for a prayer of supplication, praying for those things that we worry about. Instead of worrying, we're praying. Praying for those requests that we told our friends, we will pray for you. Or maybe we just noticed somebody who seemed a little off today and you don't know what's wrong. Say a prayer for them. We can inhale up, exhaling forward fold, stepping back with that left foot, coming into standing lunge again. Remembering to reach up with the fingertips and arms, but shoulders are down. The traps have 4 fiber directions and 3 parts. We want to mostly engage those middle and lower traps. Rhomboids are stabilizing the shoulder blades while we're lifted like this. Getting a stretch to the back, latissimus dorsi. Breathing, pressing that front foot into the mat. Getting a good stretch of the hip flexor on the back. And let's open up to warrior 2. Shoulders down away from the ears. Breathing. Pose of strength. Much like we can have rest because our shepherd's work, we can have stability, confidence when we are in him, his sheep. Inhaling, exhaling. Let's straighten that leg, coming overhead for lifted triangle. Taking a breath here, then taking those hands to face the front of the mat or whatever your front is. And we'll drop down with the right. Opening up, again, resisting gravity here. The core is working because what feels right is to tip down. But we are opening up, stacking those shoulder blades, stacking the shoulders, engaging the core, reaching and opening, soft knees, breathing. And let's drop that left hand down. Let's come into that rotation. We're going to turn the rear foot. So really our footwork here is more like a pyramid. I'm not going to call this a rotated triangle. I'm going to call it a rotated pyramid. Reaching up with that right arm, twisting from the belly button
Again, if the shoulder bothers you, you have that option to come here. All the work should be happening in the core anyway. Feeling our belly button lift, followed by the chest and the head. Breathing. And let's release that right hand down. Once again, we have an option here in pyramid to use the blocks. Head hanging down, chest and abdominals resting on that front leg. We can have the hands at the ankle, the calf, the floor. We can take them behind us. You want to kind of open the chest if we do that. Feeling a good release. You might notice a difference in the right and left. I do. I've always been more flexible on the right until last spring, took a car ride, and ever since that ride to Ohio, my goodness, hamstrings needing a little extra care on this side. Pay attention to all those things, be kind. We're here to feel better, not worse, right? We can put a bend into that leg. Maybe move these out of the way so you can see. Taking our hands to the mat, opening up to side plank. Remembering our options. If our shoulders are bothering us, we can come down to that forearm. If this is too difficult, too much weight, we can come to that knee position. Finding our side plank. I like crisscrossing the extended legs, but you can also stack them. And let's draw that hand back down. I want the hands to be towards the right of the mat so we can lift that left leg up. Doing any moving around we need to bring that knee over the heel. Soft elbows, extending that right leg out. If your wrists are bothering you, you can also come into fist for wrist here. Anytime we're in that open hand position that you feel like you can keep your stability with these fists for wrists, go for it. We're on our wrists a lot in yoga. It's just a way we can take care of them. Fists for wrists. And we can drop that knee, swinging that left leg behind us, shifting back into child's pose. Breath or two here. Let's take our hands over to the right, drawing that left foot up, framing it, pushing off, inhaling up, hands meet, coming to heart center. All right, we're going to do some balance work. We've got options. We always have options. We're going to be stabilizing on our left leg. Find a good solid spot. Find something that can be a focal point, and then we lift the right leg. Now we can stay right here, strengthening that left leg. Or if you'd like to advance, take 2 fingers of the right, keeping your eye on that focal point, extending the left arm out, and extending out that right foot. Staying here, or again, we have an option where we can open this up towards the side. Breathing, keeping our eye on that focal point. Knowing that if we fall out of the pose, all we have to do is get back in. No big deal. It's actually such a good thing when we find that point that's right at the edge of our ability, because that's where we change, we grow. When we only do things that we feel good at, we don't get better at anything, right? All right, let's take that knee. We're gonna cross the ankle over the left, sinking the hips back, opening up to standing pigeon. We do want to have a flexed foot here to protect the tissues of the knee. Let's make sure that we're not flexing the back here. Breathing and noticing the heat between the hands. Whatever depth feels right to you today. And we can release that. Notice how different the left feels than the right. And then we'll stabilize on that right foot. Lifting the left knee, deciding that maybe we'll stay here, or taking those 2 fingers of the left, finding our focal point, extending out, having the option to turn to the side a little bit, not turning to the side, just bringing that leg to the side. Breathing, holding, noticing the floor underneath of our feet. See, we all fall out. It is human to fall out of a pose, but a yogi gets back in, right? And now we can, with control, release that foot, crossing it over the right, sinking into that standing pigeon, hands at heart center, using our breath to anchor us here. This moment as we strengthen that leg, strengthening not just the muscles, but the tendons and the ligaments. Another inhale, another exhale, and we can step this out. Inhaling up, exhaling, forward fold. Take a breath here and then let's come down to all fours, hands underneath of the shoulders, knees underneath of the hips. Feeling nice and stable here. We're gonna take that right leg, let's just lift and lower a few times for a little glute work, keeping that in line with the hip. And we can lift and hold. Here's where we have options. We can stay here in sunbird, or making sure we're nice and stable on that right hand, we lift the left, reaching, drawing back, finding that ankle, and lifting into tiger. Breathing. This is a great pose for women, for menstruation, menopause, all the reproductive organs. It can also help with, for losing weight, losing it in the hips. Breathing and holding. We've got some back extension here. Rear foot is flexed to help protect that knee. And we can release that down. Let's just open up the rib cage on the left. Open up the rib cage on the right. Now we're going to stabilize on the left hand. Reaching up the left foot, bringing it back down. Couple bent leg mule kicks. Noticing where we're feeling this most. Should be feeling it in the gluteus maximus, but can we feel it in our hamstrings too? Lifting and holding. Taking that right arm out, reaching, coming back, finding that ankle, and lifting. And tiger. Every breath deep, long. Noticing where we're feeling this. This isn't like a gym workout where we just hop on cardio, throw on the headphones and not think. Thinking about where we feel this. And we can release that down. We're gonna come into puppy. We're gonna walk the hands forward, keeping control. The hips are gonna stay over the knees. Maybe we can draw even the chest down. Bringing that chin to the mat. This is like that puppy getting a good stretch. Often we think about this as a cross between down dog and child's pose. If you're in child's pose and you can't bring those hips down, we say, oh, do puppy, your hips are high. Or if you're in down dog and your wrists bother you, we say, oh, do puppy. But it's not just plan B. Puppy is its own pose. Hips high, arms extended, open shoulders. And let's bring those hands back. Place of support. And then we're going to take our hands down. Another option, if our wrists bother us in down dog, is dolphin. You can have your hands open with fingers spread wide like a starfish, or you can clasp them. The important thing is that we want those elbows underneath of the shoulders. Then we're just going to kick up the tailbone like we do in down dog. Pressing the heels towards the mat, head hanging down just like in down dog. But pressure to the forearms, much easier on the wrists. Notice our head is a little bit closer to the mat. This can be good preparation if you're preparing for a forearm stands. Breathing, you'll probably notice your heels are a little higher in this than maybe in a down dog. And we can drop those knees. Let's come onto the belly. Coming into Sphinx. Elbows underneath of the shoulders, lifting the torso up. Let's make sure that we've got those ankles in line with the hips. And now we're gonna lift that right foot up, flexed foot, extending our right arm, reaching, coming back, finding the ankle. Now we can stay here in a half bow, or we can move into a full bow by kicking up that left leg, extending out the left arm, reaching, coming back, finding that, and then giving it a little lift. Breathing, finding some openness in the chest. So we draw the shoulders back, doing a little stretch in the hip flexors. If you are just doing one side, go ahead and switch sides. Drawing up the left, reaching back, finding it. What feels stretched here? Probably the whole front of the body. What's stabilizing and strengthening? The back of the body. This is another one of those phone busters. Does a reverse of all the damage we get over the phones. And let's release that back. Coming back into child's pose. Seeing how many different parts of the body we can release towards the mat here. Inhaling, exhaling. And we can walk the hands towards the body. Bringing those legs around in front of us. Let's extend one leg, single leg staff, other leg we're just gonna open up, sitting to the front of the tailbone, coming down with the torso. We're not bringing the head to the leg, we're bringing the stomach down to the leg. Breathing and drawing those toes towards us. Finding some length in the hamstrings. Making sure we feel that in the belly of the hamstrings, not in the knee. All that blood flow that we've got in the muscles, it's not the same in our joints and ligaments. So we want to feel that in a place that we can heal better. And let's come up other side, extending out the left leg. Drawing the right into a bent position, sitting to the front of the tailbone, drawing forward. Feeling that release down the back of the leg. Breathing. Toes drawn towards the abdominals. Not drawing the head down. Drawing down the torso. And let's lift. Let's move into the restorative part of our session. We're going to grab a block and come into restorative bridge. We're going to be on our backs, feet to the mat, lifting the hips. If this is your first time doing restorative bridge, we want to be nice and short. I'm going to bring it to this height, lifting and placing that block under the sacrum. This is great if you sit all day. I do work at a desk for a great deal of the day. And this feels really good to me. We want our feet to be in a position where they're not having to do anything. This is a great chance to return to our breath. Inhaling 4, exhaling 8. If we've lost that, it's time to bring our attention back to the breath. The more we let go, the more we feel the benefits from this pose. Just letting that block create a release in the low back. Everything resting, fingertips, jaw. Do these nothing poses bother us at all? Notice if we just don't want to do these times where we have to be a little bit more still and do a little bit less. Think of that as our green pasture, that we're making ourselves to lie down in this green pasture of restoration. You can imagine maybe a family, kids running all over the place, having a great time, yelling, playing, and then mom calls them to dinner, and the whole mood kind of shifts. As you just hear maybe the quiet clinking of silverware, suddenly there's nourishment and rest. There was nothing wrong with all of the chaos that was going on before, but we need that time of rest also, and that's kind of what this green pasture is. There are things we have to do. There are stresses that we're going to have to face in life. But God doesn't want us to sit there forever. He calls us to come away on a regular basis for rest. And now we can tiptoe those feet to a closer position to that block to get some stability, lifting the hips, releasing that block. Let's draw the knees in towards the chest, rocking that out, releasing that left foot towards the mat, crossing the right over, and then drawing this towards us, finding the ankles, coming into a supine Turkish twist here, getting a twist of the hips. Once again, flex feet, protecting the tissue under the knee. And let's just reverse this, taking the right foot down, crossing the left over, drawing this towards us, breathing. Notice that when we give this pull to the ankles, we might be hunching the shoulders, finding some tension in the jaw. If we do, just release that. Let's be aware of it. We might wind up noticing that during the day, we're doing the same thing. That's why we notice things in yoga. If we constantly notice that we immediately start tensing the jaw when we're doing a pose, then it's likely we're doing that when we get stressed the rest of the day. So that can be our signal to release that. Let's release. Knees to chest. We might choose to put a pillow under the knees as we move into our final relaxation, or we can extend the feet towards the corners of the mat, drawing our hands down, doing any wiggling that we need to do to find that place of complete stillness. Taking our last purposeful breath, inhaling and then exhaling, and then just letting our breath become natural. Coming away to that green pasture is a lot like our final relaxation. This can be a chance for us to come away to a place of quiet, place of stillness. Have you ever been in a conversation where they did all the talking or you did all the talking? That isn't really how a conversation is supposed to be. We probably walked away from that conversation not
feeling quite right about that. And prayer is a conversation with God, and quite often we do all the talking, don't we? So let's take some time for stillness and quiet here. Asking the Lord to impress on your heart whatever it is He would like you to know, to feel, to do, to be. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Maybe imagine yourself in that green pasture, warm sun on the skin, cool green grass underneath, feeling of rest just washing over us. And we can open the eyes, wiggling the fingers, maybe the toes, maybe reach overhead like when you wake up in the morning. Then we can draw that knee towards the chest, rolling up, coming to a seated position.